Alright, we are recording. And please forgive me. I'm gonna start by showing you the first and simplest script, though simplest script is, it's a very relative term. Because over the years, with taking the media off of the disk and putting it onto a computer, as I showed how to do in the previous video, I've come up with some solutions that definitely work, but I over-engineer things a lot. Fortunately, at least I think it's fortunate, I do this predominantly in batch files, Windows batch files. And you might think that, well, wait, that doesn't make any sense. Batch files are really limited. There's a lot of stuff you can't do with them. You'd be surprised. There's some neat stuff you can do. For example, batch parameters. I use those a lot. They're very nice. We're going to be seeing those shortly. I also use custom functions. And you might be thinking, wait a minute, batch files support custom functions? No, they don't. It's practically basic. It's just going from one line to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. You can't do that. It's like, yeah, you can. Let me show you. So this is my generic cut file that I just take this script, put it in the folder, and then I fill it out so that then I can drag and drop a file, and now I get 5 pieces, typically is what I'm aiming for. That's why we've got the 5 lines here. And it's pretty dense. Each one of these is pretty dense. But let me start off with this echo off. For those of you unfamiliar, that's just saying, hey, Windows, when you're running this thing, you don't need to throw every single command into the prompt, okay? Just show me the stuff, show me the output of the stuff I'm telling you about. Then we got this title line, which actually, there's 2 things here. One is that's naming the window, because it opens up, command prompt window, it names it. So now you know what's going on there. But let's also talk about this. So that is an example of a batch parameter. So a batch parameter would actually just be that. If you drag and drop a file onto a batch file, the complete file name, as in its directory, its path, drive and path, everything is stored in that %1. That's for the first file. The second file will be %2, and so on. Okay? Well, if you only want the name of the file, then you put that N in there. Okay? If you wanted the name and the extension, go like that, because X is just the extension. Okay? So this will just put the name of the file that you dragged and dropped onto this one into the title. Okay? So that's batch parameters. You can move through them with a command called shift. You can also just call them up specifically, as is also going on here, a little bit lower down. I will get to that. I'm trying to go from top to bottom because as complex as this is, that's probably the most logical way to go through it. We'll see. As I said, I'm sorry. It all works. I promise. It all works. So now we get to this call. And this is for anyone thinking that, wait, you can't do custom functions. Yes, you can, because you can call them up with the call command. And you just need to have it named. As you can see, it's named down here. I will get to everything in here. This is the most complex portion, and I use a lot of custom functions. But for now, just understand the name of the function is cut call. I'm now using another batch parameter, %(dp1). So what that's saying is, look in, well, that will be the drive and path to this. So that's if we, actually, it isn't showing it. Okay, that's fine. It isn't showing, OBS is not showing the title bar for Notepad++ here. But this would be, if I were to drag and drop this file, it would be m:/, that's the D portion. And then the P portion would be the ffmpeg batch file /reencoding /@film /cut. That's just where I'm holding the files for now for the purpose of this video. Okay, that's what we put in there. Next we have the actual file itself, the MKV file, which, because this is just, a generic file that I go in and edit, I'm just using ASD, because it's, quick to put in there, and obviously we'd want to change that. And by the way, this one right here is an example of, hang on, does that show up? No, it doesn't. Okay. Mouse over isn't being caught by OBS, that's fine. But the other cut file is actually the one for FreeRAM. Okay, so I can show you when this is actually all filled out. We've got A, B, C, D, E. I typically try to work with 5, sometimes it will be more, but 5 separate pieces of whatever media I'm trying to process, and they're just labeled A through E. And if I want to, I can change it. I can make that 1, and now it'll be labeled with a 1, and so on. I can also do like that. All works. And then we've got timecode information here, which that is just telling it, hey, start at this point, and then cut. By default, I have it set to 12 seconds. The reason I go with 12 seconds is because I know that's going to cover one group of pictures, at least, for GOP, G-O-P. Excuse me. All modern video codecs that we interact with, they use interframe compression. I'm going to be talking a lot more about compression in a different video. Not so much this element of it, but I will be. We'll get into it elsewhere. But the idea is, one frame, because of interframe compression, one frame can be used to describe other frames. Typically, those after, some codecs do support also ones before it. So there's a look-ahead kind of stuff. So the group of pictures that, hey, all the information to describe these pictures is contained in here, that's a GOP. You want to make sure that you cover at least one of those. You can technically cut early, right? FFmpeg will do that. Not necessarily ideal, but it can do that. It won't cut early. Sorry, if this is the start of the GOP, right, and you're aiming for that, but you give a timecode here, it'll actually start at this GOP. That is just how FFmpeg works. It will start at the beginning of the GOP that you tell to start in. To do anything else would require it re-encode, because now it needs to rebuild the GOP. So, yeah, this can be a little wonky. I have actually seen it where FFmpeg just flakes out completely and is like, you know what, I'm not going to include any video in this file. It's like, just, if that would have happened at this 1 minute 14 seconds, just 1 minute 13, try again. Nope. 12. Okay, now it worked. It's fine. Okay, now as said, by default, I'm doing 12 seconds. If you want to change that in this script, that's all you gotta do. And it's just a number of seconds. So this would now be a 20-second long clip. Okay, but by default, it is 12. All right. Just trying to think if there's anything else to mention. I will emphasize a point I already made, but it does show up later. This is a stream copy, meaning that there is no difference of any of the streams between what these output files are and the input. Okay, there's no re-encoding. It's literally cut, here's the file. Okay. Oh, I should also mention as we continue to go down, this is very important. Exit is very important. Because, well, that tells it to, hey, stop what you're doing. In this case, I need to hear because if that weren't there, it would actually keep going down. And we don't want it to. We just want it to go call, cut call. Okay, now I go down here. It does this stuff, I will explain shortly, and then hits this exit /B0, which tells it, okay, come back up to here. And it would actually then come up to where the cursor is right now, and then it would, there's nothing there, so we go to the next line and so on. Pause here, so that if I'm having a problem, I can just do that and it will just hold the window there until there's some sort of input. So it's helpful for troubleshooting. And I will also mention there's 2 ways to do comments in in batch files. One is this with 2 colons. That seems, if you're using Notepad++, that seems best for, hey, I want this just stored here permanently. It is a comment in there. If you want to just like quickly toggle things on and off though, because Notepad++, Control Q will do that. It'll just comment out the line. It uses REM space, so remove, I assume. But I don't need to do that here, but we will be seeing it in other places. Okay. This is basically just explaining what the batch parameter is there, and now we can get to the cut call function, which, pardon me, I need to cough. All right, back. So the cut call function, all we really need is that. This stuff after is really just a note for me, because what I'm doing is I'm passing it additional information. I'm passing it the folder. That's this. The film, right there. The ID, so what is written into the, what the file name will be to ID it, the output file name. The start, here, and the length, which isn't there because I'm just using the default of 12 seconds at the moment. When we get to the actual one over here, for example, there's a difference. I will explain that when we get to it. Okay, so these are just helpful for me. It doesn't impact the script at all. Okay, so now the batch parameters, the syntax for batch parameters for the whole file also apply for these individual functions. So as you can see, the first one there is %1, %2, and so on. But these are only going to reference here. Okay? So we're not, if I were to drag multiple files on there or something, these are not going to get confused by that. Like, this is only going to refer to this, but this is still going to refer to the file, or this is still going to refer to the file that I dragged and dropped onto the batch file. So it is contained in here. Typically, it gets a little weird. I have actually seen sometimes they do come out, but that largely seems to be when there is no other value there. Like this one, this %1 does not overwrite an already %1 batch parameter. That seems to be the behavior, but I think it is possible this may overwrite. I'm not certain. It's not really relevant. I've not run into anything where I need to be doing that, so I probably shouldn't be saying it at all. But for now, just accept that, yes, these parameters, they are just for the function, not for the whole script. These, however, can be accessed outside. Not relevant yet. That will be relevant in other videos. As I said, this stuff gets pretty complicated. But in any case, for simplicity, because it's a lot easier to refer to the fold variable as fold and the film variable as film, I do assign the parameters to these different things. So fold 1, and I'm just typically not capitalizing in here, but I can. That's on board. Batch files do support both, and they are different. So a capital fold like that is different from lowercase fold. Anyway, getting to here, set length. It is set to be whatever this is. Oh, well, there isn't. Hang on. Let me do it this way. There isn't anything there. Well, in that case, if, and the quotes are important here. If quote, then calling up the length variable, and this is how you call up variables in, traditional variables, not the batch parameters. Traditional variables in a batch file is the name of the variable, length, with percent symbols on both sides. The quotes are necessary. If that equals nothing, just double quote, then it tells it set the length to 12. So that's hey, nothing was given here. So length itself is blank, is empty. And that's why these quotes are necessary. Because if nothing is there, then it will be double quotes over here, double quotes over here. Okay? Yeah, whereas if this were, say, I put in 20, now it would look like that, and clearly that is different. Yep. When you are setting a variable, you can just use its name like we see here. You don't need, it's when calling up a variable that you need the percents. So, okay. Continuing, if we now have a check to make sure that the folder and the file exist. If it doesn't, then just skip. Because maybe you typed something in wrong, whatever. It's still I don't want it throwing an error or that, hey, this file doesn't exist or anything like that. That can cause confusion potentially. Just move on. Now we get to the ffmpeg command itself. So it's calling ffmpeg. I do keep it in my path. I do keep the path to it in the environment variable path. That, by the way, will also be coming up later. As I said, my scripts are kind of complicated, but they work. They work. And then we tell it to seek to the start, to the start position. So that's what this is, and it's a lot easier to see to read start there than %4 of the input file -I. I'm probably going to in the future assume you just understand how ffmpeg works. I will go through it here though. So the input file, which is in the folder and that film, for a duration -T is actually for duration, the length. -C is referring to what codec to use. Well, it should use the copy codec, literally what I was saying before. Just take everything, don't make any changes. Takes all the streams. So map 0 is saying, because ffmpeg starts any count at 0. So this, because I'm not specifying the type of stream, video, audio, subtitle, any of that, is just like, okay, take everything from this file, the first file that was given. So map 0 is going to be just what this is. If I also had like that, so now there's 2, then I'd want to reference a map 1. Not doing that here. I'm just trying to think. Are there any? No. No, at this point, I used to, but I've managed to solve those problems, so don't need to. So it will always be map 0. It might be map 0v, colon v, map 0, colon a, but for now, don't need to worry about that. Take the metadata as well. -sn, that's saying don't bother with the subtitle track. That has actually caused me problems when I included. Yep, so that's why that's not there. Say, and then, saying, yeah, this is for the output here. Put it in the folder, naming the file AV1 test, and then whatever the ID is, mkv then at the end, and -n. So explain, I got 2 things to explain there. I'll start with the -n. That's just saying, hey, telling FFmpeg, if the file is already there, or any file by that name is already there, skip it. Don't overwrite. The other is, okay, why am I calling this AV1 test? A, B, C, and so on. Why am I doing that? Because years ago, when I was first figuring this stuff out, it was AV1 I was experimenting with. I was using X265 for basically everything. And AV1 I would experiment with, because it wasn't ready yet. As I mentioned at the end of the previous video, it's only been, to me, in recent months, that I'm actually seeing an AV1 encoder truly compete with 265, such that I will just go to that first. I can change this name. You can change this name. It's very easy. You would just, put whatever in. If you want to do cut, if you want to do section, whatever. I'm leaving it AV1 test. There's nothing wrong with that. And then we get another, the exit /B0. So it's like, hey, once you're done with this, return and just go to the next one and work through the list. 2 things quickly want to mention before I get to the next to this file. Hopefully I remember both of them. One is, that's right. One is when you drag and drop this, a file onto this to cause this script to run, it doesn't matter what the file is. Technically, I think you can also just run the script. No, you can't. You do need drag and drop because it needs to have a file dropped onto it to know what DP1 is. But it can be the media file itself. It could be anything else in that folder. Because once it has the name, it knows where to look. It doesn't matter. But it does need to be told what the folder is that you're in. So you do need drag and drop it. I forgot what the other one. Oh, yeah, that's right. I do strongly recommend you hang on to these files when you're done. Okay, the script files, they take very little space. But it is how I mentioned, I used to do X265 a lot. Now I'm doing AV1 more because it seems to finally be at, not necessarily parity, but it is more directly competitive and covers basically everything and does fairly well. Maybe I had this in 265, now I want to take it to AV1 because I may be able to, shrink the file down better, improve its quality, whatever. I want to use the same cuts that I used before. Helps if you keep the file that does that cutting. So yes, I do strongly recommend you do keep this script. And it will look something like this. So this is actually the one that I used, because I still have it, just copied it over for Freerun. So, as you can see here, Freerun Season 1, Episode 1, I actually am using it 3 times, referencing that one 3 times, and then I'm using Episode 15, 21, and 28. Typically, if I'm doing a movie, obviously all 5 cuts would have to be in the single movie. For a television series, though, I want to jump around. In this case, because it's only 1 season, that means jumping around within the season. But for other series, like, it's actually still processing, my test system over here, is still processing Babylon 5 right now, that's 5 seasons long. I actually pull something from each season. Normally, it would be just 1 a season. For Babylon 5, I decided to have it be 2 per season, because I wanted to include some of its CG effects in there to make sure that those would also look good versus the live action. So, in this case, no, it's just 1, then A, B, C, D, E. Why do I have 1? What is up with this? I strongly recommend, if you are going to do this kind of stuff with a television series, cut out, and that's what this is, cut out the opening sequence and see how that looks. Because, for one thing, it's longer, so it's a little bit more representative. But although the opening sequence of some television series can look nothing like the series itself. So, can get a little complicated there, but I'd still recommend doing this because that's something that is in every single episode. Okay? If it changes over the course of the series, then cut it out twice. Then you cut out both versions and see how it looks. Because this is the one common thing across every episode. Even if you are going to skip the opening, I would still recommend that you do this because we're trying to pull out references that we're then going to process to see how they look. Obviously, you want to do the thing that's consistent through them all. And it also, in some cases, might be the best looking. I did say that they can look different. It might be the best looking because, like, hey, this thing is going to be opening every single episode we're ever going to air of this, or just dozens of episodes, multiple seasons. We want to make it look good. It's going to look better than the rest of the series. So, we still, best foot forward, best impression. So yeah, make sure you pull that. I do believe that is it. I guess just 2 quick things I will also mention. This is my preferred nomenclature for naming the files, just S01, E01, and so on. I believe I've mentioned before, I use Jellyfin on my server. I can put the batch files in the folder. Jellyfin doesn't see them. It doesn't know what to do with batch files, so it just ignores them. Perfectly safe to store them. Alright, that should be it that I need to talk about. The next video is going to be a bit more involved, because there's a lot more of this going on, and it's good stuff. It is good stuff, but yes, it's going to be a bit complex. So hopefully you understood what I was saying about batch parameters, which in the case of up here, it's literally what you're dragging and dropping. Well, it is what you are passing to the file. Drag and drop onto it is a way to pass a file to another file. Okay? And it's also how we are passing information to the function. Same kind of idea. That's what the parameters are. That's what the arguments are. Personally, I like naming them like this for clarity, so then I can use them further down. Later on, I will show you that I use them in other ways as well. Because, like in this start, this length, those are actually accessible up here. So if I were to do, say, echo %start, it'll actually return this value right here. Because this was written into this variable here, and then echo is just, hey, print, whatever the variable is here, print that message. So yeah, and that there are instances where that is actually useful to do. But that is in a different script, which means it has to be in a different video. See you next time.